I hope you know that when you come into the country legally, that means you came in the right way. You came in with a visa. You walked through the airport. You walked through TSA. You were cleared by customs. You walked outside. A family member picked you up. A friend picked you up. You took a cab. You went off to your location, destination. You entered legally. That visa that you came in with has an expiration date. And if that visa expires on that expiration date and you are still in this country without addressing your status, then you are considered to be an illegal person. Your status is now illegal. Such is the case of this Jamaican who was found working in Maine as a police officer who had entered the United States of America through Miami International Airport. Now, we've talked about this before, how far Maine is from Miami and how he went from one location to the other. And there are other people who said in the comment section under the videos, hey, I did the same thing. My destination was Massachusetts, and I ended up entering the US from Miami, Florida, and I made my way up. That doesn't necessarily mean that he is illegal. We never said he was. We said he came in legally, but because he overstayed by years, he was then considered an illegal alien and fair game for ICE agents to arrest, detain, and deport. Here's the latest update of the Jamaican who was found working as a armed police officer in Maine. How do you get past all those checks to become a police officer in the US, even with your status being what we would call illegal? Well, let's get into it. So, a Maine resort town is challenging Trump's administration's criticism of its police department after a seasonal reserve officer was arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcement last week. What's happening now is nobody is trying to take the blame. Everybody is pointing at each other. The government's pointing at the police department. The police department is pointing at the government saying, we used you to verify his background. You cleared him. But there are still questions to be asked. What type of documents did he present to the police department? And who helped him to get those documents? Because those documents, falsified if they were good enough to actually pass the government's check. So the incident is putting renewed focus on the accuracy of E-Verify. E-Verify is the system that the federal government created for employers to check if a prospective employee have legal authorization to be working in the United States of America. They actually encourage employees to check this. That way, when they run up in your business and they try to verify all your employees, you can simply say, look, I have 10 employees. I use E-Verify. Each one checked out on E-Verify. Boom, you're good to go. They won't be fined as business owners who are hiring illegal immigrants. Federal immigration officials have asserted that the Old Orchard Beach Police Department either knowingly hired this unauthorized immigrant as an officer or did not do enough independent verification of the man's status. Why would a police department hire a immigrant who they know is out of status? That makes no sense to me. So the department has said that it thoroughly checked the background of John Luke Evans, the Jamaican national, and that he was approved to work there as an officer in May through the Department of Homeland Security's E-Verify program. Homeland Security is the one that messed up. Homeland Security is the one that dropped the ball. But let's get further into this. So, ICE said it arrested Evans, the Jamaican citizen, last Friday after he unlawfully attempted to buy a firearm, which we know about by now. It was the purchase of the firearm or attempted purchase that triggered everything else that happened. A warning from the Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, which works alongside ICE. And once they were notified, They looked into his background again, and then they realized that Evans had actually overstayed his visa that required him to leave the United States of America since October of 2023. We're in 2025. But the town's police department said that when they ran all his paperwork through E-Verify, they were told that he is good to be here until 2030. So the Old Orchard Beach Police Department followed all of the pre-employment guidelines that were expected of an employer in the state of Maine and in the United States of America. And we are providing this additional information in response to statements that were made by certain federal agencies that only work to undermine public trust and confidence in the municipal law enforcement, they said. The town's manager, Diane Asanza, said in a joint statement with the police department on Wednesday evening. Last time we did a follow-up on this case, the police department, the head of their police department, was actually asking for a independent investigation to be done in the arrest of John Luke, the Jamaican, because they were pretty sure that they have somebody who is perfectly legal to work in the United States of America, and they wanted to know, why did ICE come arrest one of their officers? Not only did ICE arrest one of their officers, this officer had sort of formed a brotherhood with the rest of the team that he was working with. He was well liked on the job. He became very known pretty soon. You know, they said he had a charm about him, and he worked really hard, and he was really effective and efficient, and he was an intricate part of their team, all this other stuff. I don't think for a second that any police department, especially one in an area where it is predominantly white, would go out of their way to illegally hire a black immigrant and then mask his identity or mask his status just to keep him employed. Obviously, it's not the police department that dropped the ball on this one. So today, the Department of Homeland Security again doubled down and again said it was not their fault and that the police department failed to do their vetting like they were supposed to do. Damn. The joint statement came after Department of Homeland Security said earlier that using E-Verify does not absolve employers of their legal duty to verify documentation authenticity, and that all employers should take necessary steps to verify effectively legal employment status. This is after the government told them to use this website to verify employment. Now they're saying it does not necessarily absolve employers of their legal duty to verify documentation authenticity. So if we can't depend on the government to verify the authenticity of documents, who else can we depend on? Because we certainly can't do it. The Old Orchard Beach Police Department's reckless reliance, they said, on E-Verify. Imagine the government telling you to rely on E-Verify, and then you use E-Verify, end up hiring a illegal immigrant, and then they call you reckless for your reckless reliance on E-Verify. On E-Verify. I find that to be funny as hell. That's crazy. Well, McClellan defended the E-Verify system even further, saying that it is a proven no-cost tool that delivers high accuracy in verifying work authorization by cross-checking employees' documents against the government's database to combat rampant document fraud and protection for American workers. You know, it's better if they just admit the mistake that was made and keep it moving. However, I need you to keep listening here, because a lot of people are saying, I wonder, what did the police department demand of John Luke, the Jamaican? What documents did they demand of him in order for him to be submitted to E-Verify? Did John Luke assume someone else's identity? So after McLaughlin issued that Department of Homeland Security old statement, the Old Orchard Beach released a statement of its own detailing the steps that they use to verify this immigrant's status and his eligibility to work. Check this out. The town manager said that before the police department hired this Jamaican national, they complied and they compiled a 153-page personnel file on him. 153 pages of a personnel file on him that included thorough background checks, driving records, copies of identification cards, his education background, his medical records, and even had personal references. These are people who you know, who can vouch for you, all this. 153 pages they compiled, and they turned that over to E-Verify and passed. Evans provided required information, including a I-9 federal immigration and work authorization form, as well as even his Jamaican birth certificate. Massachusetts driver's license was presented. U.S. Social Security card was presented. Work authorization card was presented, among other documents, according to the statement and according to what the police department who hired him has the file on him. Now, this leads me to ask, okay, he might have had his Jamaican passport, but how did he get a Massachusetts driver's license, and when was that issued? Remember, he came into the country 2023, and he was supposed to leave within 6 months of him coming into the country. He was supposed to leave in 2023. He is here in 2025. So, and I don't think you can get a driver's license with a visa. So how did he get a driver's license? Well, he was able to present a driver's license that passed federal check. He has a social security card with a working social security number. He has a work authorization card, among all other documents, according to the statement. Somewhere along the line, somebody made a mistake. So the Old Orchard Police Department thoroughly checked Mr. Evans' background, they said, and that they verified all information and documents that he provided, and they all turned out to be accurate. The depth of his personal files shows the diligence that the town takes in hiring any of these police officers, said their chief, Elise Chard. It said that it then submitted Evans' forms to the Department of Homeland Security after they compiled 153 pages with his birth certificate, his driver's license, his driving record for the last how many years, his social security card, his work authorization card, all of that. And then they submitted that to E-Verify. And in May, that federal agency verified Evans' status and said that he was legally able to work up until March 19th of 2030. That would have given him 5 years from today. Evans would not have been permitted to begin work in Old Orchard Beach without Department of Homeland Security verifying his status. The federal government has aggressively pushed all employers, government and private, to rely on E-Verify in the hiring process. This is what the town police department has said, that the government has been, and I've seen it too myself in writing. It said if those who are in the position of hiring and firing, the business owners, managers, those people need to go through E-Verify. That is one way of making sure that you're on the right track. So again, I find it funny that they did all of that only to be told by government agencies that you should not have used E-Verify or should not have relied on E-Verify so much. It's like they were saying, use E-Verify, but still find another way. Simply stated, had the federal government flagged his information, the town would not have hired Mr. Evans. Any insinuation that this town and department were derelict in our efforts to verify Mr. Evans' eligibility to work for this town is simply false, and it appears to be an attempt to shift the blame onto a hard-working local law enforcement agency that has done its job. The police released 54 pages of his personal file, which NBC News has reviewed. 54 pages they have released, and NBC has reviewed it, showing records related to his police department application process, which state that employment is conditional upon a background check, the submission of mandatory paperwork. He had a drug screening done and mandatory training sessions which he attended and passed. The records also shows that Evans was required to provide 2 valid forms of ID for payroll processing, and that he passed all of that and his training sessions before he was approved to work as an officer. The documents also includes Evans' resume and his educational background records. Department of Homeland Security has since not responded to requests for comments on the Old Orchard Beach Town and Police Department statement. It also did not share what steps and methods beyond E-Verify it would suggest that local police departments and other employers use to independently verify an immigrant application or applicant's legal status and their work authorization. That's crazy. So they ducking and dodging now. That's what that is. ICE had accused the police department of knowingly breaking the law. That's crazy. And hiring an immigrant in the country illegally. The police department denied that claim, of course. The police department also has all their paperwork to show that they went through all these steps and all the documents that were required of the Jamaican immigrant that they hired. So basically, it looks like the government dropped the ball. Representative Lori K. Kramlich, a Democrat who represents Old Orchard Beach in State House of Representatives, said in a statement on Thursday that in light of the conflicting accounts, she was calling for a thorough federal review of the E-Verify and the Department of Homeland Security authorization process. That allowed Officer Evans to begin work in good faith in May of 2025. That system needs to be looked into, she said, which she is absolutely right. Instead of denying that you made a mistake, admit that a mistake was made and then find out where it was made so that you don't keep making these mistakes. Because if you do, there will be a whole lot of people who are not supposed to be here because their paperwork had expired. They'll be here working as police officers and other job positions in government. So this incident highlights the importance and the necessity of reliable federal systems to support local law enforcement and lawful employment of non-citizen residents in community-serving roles. We must do better to prevent such situations in the future, protect community trust, and ensure fairness and accountability. Melissa Azalion Kenny, who is a partner at the law firm Burr and Foreman, who specializes in immigration law, she said that her experience working with clients when a prospective employee's information is properly entered into the E-Verify system, it is usually accurate in confirming their employment authorization. But in general, there have been instances of both false positives and false negatives, including potential cases of identity fraud, she said. So there have been cases where she's seen people who are qualified and the system comes back and says they're not qualified. And she has seen cases where people are not qualified and that same e-verify system comes back and says they're the opposite. Azaleon Kenny said that while all of the facts aren't fully known or public in the main case, if she were counseling an employer who had fully and accurately completed an I-9 form, thoroughly gone through the e-verify system and done the checks the police department said it did, I would at least feel confident that I could provide some sort of good faith defense to demonstrate the employers or the police department that in this case did everything it could do to comply. For those of you who don't know, Maine is one of about a dozen states that allows non-citizens to work in law enforcement. Some require an immigrant to be a green card holder, while others, such as Maine, they require the immigrant to be legally authorized to work in the U.S. Doesn't have to have a green card, just have to have a work permit. So that town has said that its police department, like many in coastal communities, use these seasonal supplementary workforces when the population surges in the summer months, because a lot of people go there for vacation time, getaway time, whatever. And then the town is pretty much overcrowded and need all the law enforcement support they can get, but they don't necessarily need that many when the holiday season is over. Maine has some 34,000 immigrant workers, or that's like 4.6% of the state's labor force, according to the American Immigration Council. Now, there are also an estimated 5,800 unauthorized immigrants of working age who are in that state, according to the council as well. Last time we checked, the police department that hired him said they have no idea of his whereabouts because ICE is not telling them where they took him to, where they're holding him, what's the next move, does he have legal representation, anything. And they figured as a police department, you should at least tell us that. They didn't. Well, after 2 weeks going in, it is now found out that John Luke Evans, who is from Jamaica, is been confirmed to be from Jamaica, is currently being held at a prison in Rhode Island. He was previously being held at Plymouth County Correctional Facility in Massachusetts. And now he is at a prison in Rhode Island. I don't know what's going to happen to him next. I'm guessing he will be processed and deported, but it depends, because if they find out that the paperwork that he submitted, like the driver's license and all those paperwork that he submitted, if those were under somebody else's name, then comes the charges of identity fraud. That's going to be something else. If the system made a mistake, they'll probably deport him as soon as possible. If they didn't make a mistake and they found out that his fraud was just so good that it got him that far, then he'll probably be punished with prison time. And then after that, of course, deported. So we're still waiting to hear more. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Tell me what you think about this one. I'll catch you on the next video. It's an update. It's SouFLoTV. I'm out. Peace.